Welcome to episode 1 of Meal Prepping Around the World, and today we're taking inspiration from India and doing a 4-day meal prep. It'll consist of some foundation recipes such as an aromatic base curry sauce, marinated tofu, and some nutty caramelized onion brown rice. We're also making some flavor boosting condiments such as homemade mango chutney and Raita. We'll then use this meal prep to create a different delicious dinner Monday through Thursday, which you can then have for lunch the day after. So let's get started with the base curry sauce, which is going to provide most of the flavor for the different curries we'll be creating throughout the week. Since we're cooking 12 portions of curry sauce, I'm going to use 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil to help with the flavor and the caramelization of the onions. Then I'm going to add some whole spices, starting with some lovely aromatic green cardamom, and I'm just going to lightly bash it to remove the green outer shell. I'm also going to add some coriander seeds and some cumin seeds. Let these spices sizzle and release their flavor into the oil. We'll then add in some roughly chopped onions. This sauce is going to be blended so they can be quite chunky. You can use any type of onion, whether that's red onion, white onion or shallots. And we're just going to add a good pinch of salt to help release the moisture from the onion and break it down. Then just cook them on a medium heat until they start to caramelize. If it does start to stick, just add a splash of water to deglaze the pan and just cool things down. Once the onions look like this, we're going to add in the roughly chopped carrots, which are going to help thicken the sauce and just add to the base of the flavour. Next I'm going to add the garlic and the roughly chopped ginger. I've simply bashed the garlic to remove the skin, but kept the cloves whole, and I've just cut off any dry bits of the ginger. We're going to be simmering the sauce for quite a while, so we don't need to be very precise with any of the chopping. Let everything fry for about 5 minutes, and then we're going to add in the ground spices. I like to add a little splash of oil to help release the aromas of the dried spices, and I'm going to go in with some ground turmeric and some garam masala. This is a masala dabba, and it's essentially a spice box, and it's really handy for when you're cooking with spices, of course, and you want to keep your most used spices in it. So for example, I've got coriander seeds, cumin seeds, turmeric, cardamom pods, and then a few others here. So definitely get yourself one of these if you like to cook with spices. I'm also going to add in some kashmiri chili powder, which has an amazing fruity, slightly smoky flavour and has an amazing vibrant red colour. I'm adding about half a teaspoon, but you can add more if you want it spicier. Then a good grating of fresh nutmeg, followed by a similar quantity of black pepper. Then a good sprinkle of sea salt. I love to use a flaky sea salt when cooking, as I find it really easy to over season things with like table salt, and it has a slightly metallic flavour I find. Once your ground spices have toasted for about 30 seconds, add in your vegetable stock and a can of chopped tomato, plus some water to wash out the can because we don't want to waste anything here. Stir everything to combine, then bring to a boil, reduce to a simmer, and we're just going to pop a lid on, slightly ajar, and let it cook for about 35 to 40 minutes, or until all the vegetables are perfectly soft. This is now ready for blending, and it will look quite thin at this stage, but once the carrot and the other vegetables are blended into it, it will thicken up nicely. And I warn you that your blender might change colour after this due to the turmeric and Kashmiri chili. So if you have any tips for destaining a blender, then let me know. I tend not to adjust the seasoning of the sauce right now, and instead do it later on when we're creating the individual dishes during the week. With this flavourful curry sauce, we'll be making a vibrant Tofu Madras, a creamy chickpea korma, and a really lovely fragrant dal. This base curry sauce is packed with savoury, spicy flavour, and it's going to help us create quick and delicious meals throughout the week. You can also freeze it in portions and use it for months to come. Next up, we're going to prepare a couple of protein sauces before we make an incredible mango chutney. First up, some marinated tofu. Simply tear the tofu into bite-sized chunks, and this is going to add a really nice rough texture to it, which the sauce is going to cling onto. For the marinade, I'm using vegan yogurt mixed with garam masala, which clearly I need to buy some more of, some turmeric, ground coriander, and some ground cumin. Then zest in some ginger and garlic. You can also add some fresh chili or chili powder if you want it to be a little bit spicy. Next we'll add some lemon juice to add a nice zing of freshness and help tenderize the tofu so it absorbs the marinade. Season with salt and pepper, and then we're just going to whisk to combine. Pour the marinade over the tofu and carefully mix to coat. In the recipe in the description, I've allowed for 200 grams of tofu per person for each meal. For some this may be too much, so just reduce the quantities of the tofu and the marinade. Get your tofu into a tub and we're going to marinate it overnight so it absorbs all that delicious flavour. For another protein source, we're going to quickly cook some red lentils simply by bringing the vegetable stock to a simmer, and then we're going to add our washed lentils and cook them for around 12 to 15 minutes. We'll be using these lentils in the korma and also in the dal, so I've slightly undercooked them so that they can absorb some of the flavours of these curries when we heat them up. Now onto the vibrant and tangy mango chutney, one of my all-time favourite condiments. Start by defrosting a bag of frozen mango. You can use fresh if you like, but it is a bit of a faff getting enough ripe mango and also preparing them. Cut the mango into 1 to 2 centimetre pieces. You can be quite rough here, no need to be really precise, as it's all going to be stewed into a delicious jammy chutney. This recipe is enough for one large jar of chutney, but you could triple it and make enough for a few months, or maybe not really that long, as it is very tasty. Into a heavy base saucepan, we're going to heat 1 tablespoon of olive oil and add in our whole spices. I'm adding crushed cardamom, cloves and cumin seeds, and we're going to let these sizzle for about 30 to 60 seconds. Then we're going to zest in a little bit of ginger and garlic. Add a pinch of flaky sea salt, followed by some basic curry powder and a little bit of turmeric, and let that cook out for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to add in the mango. And there's always a good grating of black pepper. I think a lot of the time the thing that people are missing from their cooking is simply just to be seasoning with salt and pepper throughout the cooking process. We're adding a decent bit of sugar to the mango chutney. This is to enhance the flavour, preserve the mango, and give it a nice jammy texture. You're welcome to reduce the sugar, but just make sure you reduce the vinegar as well, and the final result won't be quite as jammy, but it'll still be very delicious. Add in the sugar and the vinegar and stir to combine. Then we're going to bring it to a simmer and cook for about 30 minutes or until it's thick and jammy. Towards the end of the cooking, you may want to stir it a little bit more often just to make sure it's not sticking to the bottom of the pan. For an optional final touch, I'm going to crumble in some dried fenugreek leaves, which have a really nice earthy, slightly smoky flavour, which will contrast nicely with the sweet mango chutney. There you have a tasty condiment that will last for a couple of months in the fridge, or maybe just a week if you have a hungry family, and it goes pretty well with pretty much any curry dish. Now we're going to prepare a couple of carbohydrate choices before we make a really fresh and herby raita. I was going to do a caramelized onion rice, but decided to do a slightly quicker spiced rice, which is just equally as delicious. So to jazz up this rice, we're going to start with some whole spices, including cardamom, cloves and cumin, also some coriander seeds for their lemony goodness, and then we're just going to add in some ground turmeric and let that toast for about 15-30 seconds. Then add in your washed brown rice and stir to combine, season with salt and pepper and get all the grains coated in that lovely oil that's been infused with the spices. Once it's been lightly toasted, you can add in your veggie stock or water, plus I'm adding in some sultanas which will absorb the water and go nice and plump and juicy. Place a lid on top and cook for 30 to 35 minutes over a low to medium-low heat. Don't be tempted to peek as you want to keep the steam in so that it cooks properly. After that time, remove the lid and the whole spices should have risen to the top for you to easily pick off. Then pop a tea towel on top and just let it steam for 5 to 10 minutes. You can then fluff it up with a fork and pop it into a Tupperware. Make sure to cool it down fairly quickly as you don't want any bad bacteria to start growing in it, and then you can heat it up throughout the week. Next, we're going to simply cook some potatoes, ready to make a sagaloo later on. I've just peeled the potatoes and cut them into slightly larger than bite-sized pieces. Then just add them to salted cold water, bring to a simmer and cook for around 10 to 12 minutes, or until they're nearly cooked through. Just be careful not to overcook them, and then you can leave them to steam dry and then get them into a Tupperware. Onto the fresh raita, which the recipes can vary quite a lot for, but for this one, we're going to start by removing the seeds from the cucumber and dicing it nice and small. You could also grate it if you want to. Then same with the tomato, just remove the seeds and finely dice. I usually just eat the inside while I'm cooking for a nice hydrating snack. Raita doesn't always have herbs in, but for me it's an essential, so I'm going to add some finely chopped coriander. Feel free to use chives or parsley if coriander tastes like soap to you. Then some fresh mint. For a fancy way to cut it, just layer them up, then roll it into a little cigar shape, and finally chop them into these beautiful little ribbons. Next we'll add some lemon or lime juice. Some vinegar could also work, just reduce the quantity as it is more acidic. Then a touch of agave syrup to balance with the acidity, plus some dried spices. I'm going to be using garam masala and some cumin powder. Give it a good mix and that is good to go. We're keeping the herb and yogurt mixture separate from the yogurt, and this is to stop it from going watery in the fridge. Then throughout the week, when you want some raita, you can just quickly mix some yogurt with the herb and cucumber mix, and then you're good to go, and it's going to be lovely and fresh and crunchy. This meal prep makes enough for 2 people for dinner and then lunch for the next day. So the advanced prep is now done, and we can bring together the dishes, starting with this smoky and warming Tofu Madras. To cook the tofu, preheat a baking tray under the grill with some oil, and then we're going to add the tofu and spread it out evenly. Bake for 10 to 12 minutes, turning every few minutes until it's golden and perhaps even slightly charred in places if your grill is hot enough. Next for the madras, we're going to heat up the curry sauce, and we're going to add some additional flavours by blending 2 roasted peppers with fragrant fennel seeds, smoked paprika, and some tamarind for a little bit of tang. Add some water and blend until smooth, and then we're just going to pour it into the curry sauce. I'm only making 2 portions of the curry here as I'm not making it for lunch the next day. Stir to combine, and then we're going to add in that golden tofu, bring it to a simmer and cook for around 10 minutes to let all the flavours come together and get to know each other. Grilling the tofu is my favourite way to cook it, but you could also air fry it or pan fry it, and this is how we're going to be cooking it for the curried tofu flatbread later in the week. Now all that's left is to serve it up, heat up some of that spiced rice into its piping hot, and then I'm going to have a bit of kale on the side, and of course a good dollop of that homemade mango chutney. For the raita, simply combine the cucumber and herb mix with some vegan yogurt. I'm mixing it all today as I'm demonstrating all the dishes, but really I'd only mix how much I needed for this meal and lunch the next day. Raita adds a lovely freshness to the rich curries and also helps to cool down any heat from chili. That is so good. The sauce, it's rich and has a smoky flavour coming from those roast peppers and paprika. Then it has a sweet, tangy note coming from the tamarind. And finally, there's a little bit of fragrant fennel in the background. Absolutely delicious. For day 2, we're going to be making a creamy chickpea korma and a sag aloo. Just wanted to quickly interrupt this video to thank my Patreons for supporting me and the Earthy Goodness Kitchen. If you're enjoying my videos and want to support the channel and get some cool benefits such as recipe PDFs and early access to the YouTube videos, then check out my Patreon page. I'll link it down below. Again, we're going to heat up the curry sauce and add in some ground cinnamon, ginger, ground almonds, and some coconut milk. This will turn the basic curry sauce into a more korma vibe with its typical creamy and nutty flavour. Then for the protein, I'm adding a can of chickpeas and some of the lentils that we cooked earlier. Stir through and let this simmer for around 10 minutes to meld the flavours together and finish cooking the lentils. I gave it a taste and decided to add a little tamari and a healthy grinding of black pepper to contrast against the creaminess. So that's the korma ready to go. We can now make the sag aloo. Heat 1 tablespoon of olive oil in a pan, and then we're going to add a heaped teaspoon of these fragrant mustard seeds and a teaspoon of cumin seeds. Let them sizzle for around 30 seconds, and then we're going to add in the dried spices, which are garam masala and turmeric. Then add the tomato puree and stir through, followed by the pre-cooked potatoes. Stir and toss to coat. The potatoes will get wrapped in that lovely spicy tomato mix, and they're going to go a lovely golden colour. Next we'll just add a little bit of veggie stock, followed by the washed spinach, and then the steam from the veggie stock is going to help wilt that spinach. Let that cook for a few minutes, and then for some fresh, vibrant flavour, we're going to add some chopped coriander and some lemon juice. Season the sagaloo with some salt and pepper. I personally haven't used any chilli, just out of preference, but you can add some fresh, some ground, or some chilli flakes. This has got to be one of my favourite potato dishes, and they're going to pair perfectly with the creamy korma. Serve up the potatoes with a couple spoonfuls of that curry. You can always come back for more. I also like to have some green with dinner, so today I'm just going to add some peas. For a final touch, I've toasted some coconut in a dry pan, just until it went lovely golden and brown.
Oh, I love these potatoes. The toasted coconut goes really well on those chickpeas. The chickpeas are creamy and nutty. This is a great one if you have kids, as it's a little bit milder, or if you just don't like chili. And then those potatoes, they're buttery and they've got lovely whole spices on them, which just burst with flavour. Really beautiful. Definitely give this one a go.
On to day 3, and this one's a bit simpler than the other two. We're going to make a lovely dal with a quick flavoured oil infused with spices and garlic. Heat up your curry sauce, and then we're going to add in the rest of the pre-cooked lentils. Mix to combine and then simmer for 10 to 15 minutes, or until the lentils are cooked through and the dal is thick and creamy. I'd recommend putting a lid on, as it does tend to spit quite a lot. Make sure you're tasting these dishes as you make them. I felt that the dal's flavour was slightly flat, so I added a squeeze of lime and seasoned it with salt and pepper as usual. For the optional but definitely recommended flavoured oil, heat 2 to 3 tablespoons of an oil of your choice, and then we're going to add in the thinly sliced garlic and some mustard seeds. Cook over a medium-low heat, stirring regularly. Once you see just a little bit of colour on the garlic, add the cumin and coriander seeds. Let them sizzle, and then once the garlic turns a light golden colour and is crispy, immediately take it off the heat to ensure it doesn't burn. This is going to add another layer of flavour and texture to the dal. You could also add some chilli or curry leaves to this, but this is a nice simple starting point for a flavoured oil, or it's typically called a tadka. Finish off the dal with some fresh coriander and your tempered fragrant oil. We're going to serve this with some of the lovely brown rice again, and for greens I'm going to go for some broccoli. Add a simple wedge of lime to finish. Of course, feel free to add the usual condiments such as mango chutney and raita.
Oops, dropped the lime in the dal. Not what we wanted. You've got perfectly cooked creamy lentils, and then that flavoured oil just takes it to a whole nother level. Little pops of fragrant cumin and coriander, and then crispy garlic. Really delicious. Really simple to put together as well. You just heat up the sauce, add the lentils, cook it for 10 or 15 minutes, and then you can heat up your rice and make a quick flavoured oil if you want to. I definitely recommend it. It really adds another dimension of flavour and texture.
Finally, the simplest of the 4 meals is this delicious curried tofu flatbread. I've made a sort of wholemeal naan type bread here. If you want the recipe, I can share it in a future video. Spread a generous dollop of the mango chutney on the flatbread, followed by some crunchy salad, the grilled tofu, and some fresh raita. You could also add some of the curry sauce here if you have any left. Massive thank you to Marcia Lawson for supporting the channel and helping me create these videos. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon, check out the link in the description box.
Thank you for watching today's video. Now that you've got lunch and dinner sorted, check out this video for some meal prep breakfast ideas.